The debt ceiling is a limit on the total amount of money that the United States can borrow to fund the government and meet its financial obligations. It was first established by Congress during World War I to give the Treasury Department more flexibility to borrow money up to a certain amount without needing separate approval from lawmakers for each bond issue. The debt ceiling does not authorize any new spending by the government. It simply allows the government to pay for the programs and services that Congress has already approved, such as Social Security, Medicare, national defense, interest on the debt, and many others. The current debt ceiling is set at $31.381 trillion, which is the total amount of outstanding debt that the United States had as of January 19, 2023. On that date, the United States reached its borrowing limit, and the Treasury Department began using accounting maneuvers known as extraordinary measures to continue paying the government's bills and avoid a default. However, these extraordinary measures are not enough to cover the gap between the government's spending and revenue for long. According to Treasury Secretary Janet L. Yellen, the United States could run out of cash by June 1st if the borrowing cap is not raised or suspended by Congress. This means that the government would not be able to pay all of its obligations on time and in full, which could have severe consequences for the economy and the global financial system. A default could trigger a sharp rise in interest rates, a drop in the value of the dollar, a loss of confidence in you, creditworthiness, a disruption in financial markets, and a recession. That is why it is important for the government to raise or suspend the debt ceiling before it runs out of funds. Doing so would ensure that the government can continue to honor its commitments and maintain its credibility as a borrower. It would also avoid unnecessary uncertainty and risk that could harm the economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. The White House and the Democrats are urging the Republicans to cooperate and avoid a default that could harm the economy and global financial stability. President Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy have been in direct talks to reach a deal on raising the federal government's $31.4 trillion debt ceiling before June 1st, when the U.S. could run out of money to pay its bills. Biden has said that he is willing to negotiate on the outlines of the budget, but not on whether or not the U.S. will honor its debts. He has also said that there is no alternative to raising the debt ceiling, and that every congressional leader has agreed that the U.S. will not default. The Democrats have argued that raising the debt ceiling is a bipartisan responsibility, since it reflects spending that both parties have already approved in previous years. They have also warned that a default would have catastrophic consequences for the U.S. and global economy, such as higher interest rates, lower credit ratings, reduced Social Security benefits, and a loss of confidence in the dollar. The Republicans, on the other hand, have been insisting that the Democrats agree to spending cuts in exchange for a deal to raise the debt limit. They have also demanded that the White House pull back some of the unspent COVID relief funds, impose work requirements for social programs, and reform the permitting process for infrastructure projects. The talks have been tense and frustrating, with Republicans walking out of the room at one point, accusing the White House of being unreasonable and unwilling to compromise. The negotiations resumed on Friday evening, with McCarthy saying that a deal is doable but hard to achieve in such a short timeline. As the clock ticks down to the deadline, both sides are under immense pressure to find a solution that can pass both chambers of Congress and avert a historic default. The stakes are high for the U.S. and the world, as well as for Biden's presidency and McCarthy's leadership. Possible script: the Republicans are using the debt ceiling as a leverage to demand spending cuts from the Democrats. They claim that the government is spending too much and adding to the national debt. They want to reduce the size and scope of the federal programs and agencies. They also oppose raising taxes on the wealthy and corporations. But this strategy is risky and could backfire on them politically and economically. First, it could damage their reputation as responsible stewards of the economy. The debt ceiling is not a limit on new spending, but on paying for what Congress has already approved. Failing to raise it would mean defaulting on the nation's obligations, such as interest payments, Social Security benefits, military salaries, and more. This would hurt the credit rating of the U.S., increase borrowing costs, trigger a financial crisis and a recession. Second, it could alienate their voters and supporters. Many Americans rely on federal programs and services that would be affected by a default or a shutdown. They may not appreciate the Republicans holding their livelihoods hostage for ideological reasons. They may also blame them for causing economic hardship and uncertainty. Moreover, polls show that most Americans support raising taxes on the rich and corporations to pay for infrastructure and social spending. Third, it could backfire on their legislative agenda. The Democrats have a slim majority in both chambers of Congress and can use a process called reconciliation to pass some of their bills with a simple majority. This means they can bypass the Republican filibuster in the Senate and enact some of their priorities without compromising with the GOP. The Republicans may lose their leverage and influence if they push the Democrats to use reconciliation more often. Therefore, the Republicans are playing a dangerous game with the debt ceiling. They are risking the economic stability and security of the nation for their partisan goals. They are also risking their political popularity and power for their ideological agenda. They may end up losing more than they gain if they continue this strategy.